AI, in the travel, here we go. Got that AI on the low, taking flights to and fro, booking trips in a snap with a simple chatbot flow. AI, revolutionizing how we roll. Gonna hop on a plane, feeling so.
Welcome to another episode of the Everything AI in Travel podcast, where we hear from the makers, shapers, and buyers of AI technology in the travel space. Here's your host, Tony Khan.
Hey everyone. Now, before we get started with today's show, I've got a very special guest with me who's got an event coming up later in the year that I think you should consider attending. Welcome to the show, Mr. Bruce Rassard from Arrival. How are you going?
Hey, thanks, Tony. Really appreciate the time. So Arrival, for those who aren't familiar with us, focuses on destination experiences, what you do when you get there on vacation. We all know that people don't go on trips to stay in a hotel or fly. They go to have fun when they get to destination. So that's what Arrival is all about. At our conference this year in Washington, D.C., September 29 to October 3rd, we actually have three different elements. First, we have our executive summit for the C-suite. Then the second day is our AI forum for destination experiences. It's the first of its kind. It's never happened. And we've got a great group of speakers that are going to be there to talk about the intermediate up to expert level of what people know about AI, not designed for beginners. We will have some sessions at Arrival 360, which follows the AI forum for more introductory AI.
Sounds really great, Bruce. Now, what can people expect to take away or learn from going to the AI specific part of the conference?
You know, at the AI conference, Tony, we're going to have high-level strategic discussions on our main stage, everything from agents and what's happening with that, the impact of AI on search and discovery, what you need to know from a regulatory and privacy perspective. That'll be on the main stage and more sessions like that. Some investors will be there sharing their perspective. And then we'll have breakout sessions where we're going to go deep again into search and discovery because we know how important that is. Agents, working with agents, and roll up your sleeves, bring your laptop, hour and a half long sessions on the tools. You know, we know what tools everyone's using today. By the time the event runs around in September, it'll be different. And we'll have roundtables with discussions for practical information. Here's some tools you need to start using today. By tomorrow, you can start using them.
Sounds super fantastic. I'm definitely going to be there. Where can people find out some more information?
Just go to arrival.travel and navigate your way to our Washington event. And you'll see subtitles for our executive summit and our AI forum and the rest of the conference that's going on that first week of October in DC.
Perfect. Now, there's a special offer for listeners of the Everything AI and Travel podcast, and you'll find that in the show notes. So if that sounded like something that you would like to attend, and I think you should, then go down to those show notes and grab that special offer, find out more about the conference and book yourself a ticket. Thanks for joining us today, Bruce.
Yeah, one last thing. It's Arrival with one R. For those of you listening, arrival.travel.
Perfect. Thanks for joining us, Bruce. And now on with the show.
Great.
Hi there. Welcome to another episode of the Everything AI in Travel podcast. And today we are talking about AI agents. If you follow someone like Christian Watts on LinkedIn, you probably have seen a lot of talk about AI agents. I think he posts about 3 times a day about it. So today I've got in the person who literally wrote the book on AI agents. Welcome to the show, Gam Dias.
Hey, Tony. How you doing?
Very well, and thank you so much for agreeing to spend a little bit of time with us. Now, you have written a book called Agents Unleashed, and it should be noted that you are not a travel expert specifically, but you do use travel as an example in a lot of the work that you do. What is your relationship with travel? Are you a big traveler with your family? Like, what and why use travel as an example in your work?
Okay, so I was a big traveler. I had a transatlantic relationship for 12 years. So I was back and forth, and it wasn't like because it was a personal relationship, I was booking travel myself and trying to save money, and and the flights after COVID, everything doubled. So my personal travel, since I've moved to Spain, I barely travel. Life is good here. No need to go anywhere else at the moment. However, I I've just noticed that how much time I and other people spend messing around with travel. When I grew up, we had travel agents. Everything was simple. You go into the agent, you chat. There's a relationship there as well. They understood you after a period of time, and you could just pick up the phone and say, I'm doing this trip, and they knew what to do. And then all of a sudden, just got pulled away from us. And we were left under the impression that, oh, look, we can do it ourselves. Fantastic. And yet, how much time do we all spend? And just booking a flight is now a pain in the neck. So, and I see my wife, and she's a big researcher, and she likes to be very, very thorough, and she spends 2, 3 times the length of time that I would booking hotels because she's very precise and she reads reviews. So it is actually it's very much like when Google liberated information for us, what it actually did was gave us more work, not less.
That's so true. It's so true. Yeah. So, I mean, travel agents still do exist, and there's plenty of research out there that their usage is going up, and even younger people flocking to travel agents. We hear from research, so millennials have kind of cottoned on to the fact that doing it itself is actually hard and a bit of a pain in the ass. And you can get this other human to do it for you, and it will all be done well and completed perfectly, and it doesn't cost you anymore. And so somehow, as you say, we've been seduced away from that world into trying to do it ourselves. And like you, I have also been seduced away from that world. And I think I make at least one mistake on each thing that I book, which means you have to rebook something, and like you lose money. Like, it always ends up costing you more. I don't really know why I persist doing it that way. But yeah, so it's a great example. But maybe now fill us in a little bit about how it is that you've come to write a book about agents, and what's your background in the AI space.
Yeah, so let's give you the background first. I first came into AI in 2008, really. I joined a company, and my background, I'm a product manager in business analytics and in business intelligence primarily. So a lot of things, all things data. But I did join a company, and it was a company that was analyzing customer feedback on anything really, restaurants. And what they were doing is they were taking paper forms as we used to write and transcribing them and analyzing them for sentiment and topic. And it was 2008. And all of a sudden, social media was really happening. And we flipped the company into being a social media analytics company. So that was my first encounter. So it was natural language programming, sentiment and topic analysis, semi-supervised training models. And out of that, I kind of left there. I created a startup. I co-created a startup called First Retail. We were doing e-commerce consulting, but what we were really trying to do was build tools that would tag content on the web semantically. So using rich semantic data, RDF, and build those tags. And so what we could do is ingest product catalogs and allow you to find similar things. Like here's this, find me anything similar. And we could see an automated web coming with they weren't called agents, but automated processes that could do things for you. We could see that coming. Unfortunately, our runway to build that wasn't like the 15 years it's taken. However, we ended up with a relatively successful consulting business. And then 2022, I discovered this thing called business process mining. And coming from a data and a process background, I found this and I thought this is a fantastically interesting space. I really want to get into this. And so I had a little foray into the world of Salesforce because there was some white space there. And so we built Hubble Process Analytics. And so I was now in Salesforce. And one of the things we noticed was, well, how an Agent Force launched around the same time as we were growing. And I said, well, that this fits. How do you automate a process using agents, which is really detailed? How do you do that without understanding your process? And so the process mining tool that we built became kind of almost a prerequisite for Agent Force. Before you automate something, you need to map out what it does, who's using it, where it's not being used, where the bottlenecks are, and address those problems. And so that was when I started to study agents. And that's where the book came from. It's that, okay, you're implementing Agent Force. A lot of organizations, they're very excited at the prospect of saving tons of money and automating their processes. But what stands in the way? Technical debt, your processes are poor. If you've got poor processes, automating them is just going to amplify the problems that you have. So that's kind of how I got to where I got to.
It's very, very interesting. So, a couple of thoughts that ran through my mind while you were talking there. One is my co-founder, Adrian, is ex-Amazon, and he worked in data and analytics, and his job was to find the appropriate VAT code for any product that was uploaded to Amazon and then need to be sold by Amazon, so Amazon could meet its taxation commitments in whatever jurisdiction it was being sold in using AI and ML. And you two should go and have a coffee because, like, wow, imagine the conversations that you guys could have. That was one thought. And the other thing is that, like you almost said, you foresaw or could foresee this reality that we're in now. So, for most of us, the ChatGPT launch was a revelation. And then the way that we've swiftly moved into AI agents doing things on our behalf is an even bigger revelation. But in your world, it was potentially foreseeable.
It was, yeah, almost to the point where it was obvious. I mean, I back in the early 2000s, I worked on UCCnet, which is the retail EDI standards, really, to make the information findable and addressable. And you could see if information was properly tagged at source, then we could all use it. And there were some standards, and we could see that none of this automation would work. So, having had a whole career looking at problems of like rationalizing data sets, it was very obvious that this needed to be done. And of course, this was Tim Berners-Lee's original vision when he built the web. If you read his autobiography, Weaving the Web, the last chapter paints the picture of what we're doing right now. And so it has been foreseeable. And we first presented this back in 2012 at NRF, this vision of being able to shop using an agent, and the agent kind of follows through on task because the information was already semantically available to them. So yeah, this was definitely coming. If you've come from a data world, then what we are now seeing is the answer to all of the problems and the kind of messing around that we had to do. Your friend will lived and breathed this one.
For sure, for sure. And he jumped straight into it as well. Like, as soon as the tools became available for him to experiment on his own, without having to use the expensive and complicated machinery that they required at Amazon to do their work, he jumped straight in and started building things in travel. And that's kind of where we've evolved to today. So yeah, he's certainly excited. Now, if we kind of move back to travel, why is travel such a good example for talking about AI agents? Because you could have chosen any industry to talk about the use cases, but you have focused in on travel a bit, and there's a white paper coming out very shortly that I think most of my listeners should be queuing up to download and have a read when it comes out.
There's a convergence of technologies happening. It's not only the cheap AI on every consumer's desktop, it's also the rise of digital wallets and a wallet that maintains, yes, we had password managers, user ID and password, and that was always a stumbling block for the individual. And so we have password managers, but now we're getting digital wallets that hold driving licenses and credit cards and payment things. The natural extension of that is, can it hold more things about me that will help me assert my value to individuals? So if I say every time I travel, I download my boarding passes. Now, boarding passes is a verifiable credential that I have actually, well, paid for the ticket. Even if I didn't get on the plane, I paid for the ticket. So that kind of signifies my status as a traveler. If over a year I've traveled 1 million miles across multiple airlines, I can actually claim that and assert it. So when I show up to a travel agent and say, hey, you need to pay attention to me because I travel quite a lot and I'm a good customer. I can back that up now with these verifiable credentials. So the one hand, because travel is very fragmented, it's not like you go to one bank. You might go to multiple airlines, multiple hotel groups, multiple car rental companies, and I certainly do. When I have loyalty programs in every one of them, so I don't know what that means. Um,
It means you're
but
disloyal. Yeah, that's what.
I thought I was just shopping around, but now my loyalty records are fragmented. So why don't I keep them in a personal data vault? I keep all my travel records, and then when I show up to anybody, I can show up with this. And so I think that agents can access that data and do my bidding for me and do all the booking. Now, why travel? Well, I've always said that this idea of kind of making my data valuable. If I'm just going down to the store to buy some charcoal for the grill, it's a one-off purchase. It's fairly simple. It's a transaction. But travel is actually very complicated. And, first of all, there's flights, there's loyalty, there's timings, there's the airport, my leaving airport, my destination airport, and I might have a choice of a few. So even just the flight booking is complicated. You add my history, you add my loyalty points, it becomes more complicated. Then you stick a hotel on it, and the hotel needs to be coordinated with the flights, the location. I might have two hotels because I might be driving somewhere in between the two flights. And then you add the car in. And that is about as complex as any organization wanted to get. So Expedia will bundle those things typically. And I know they've been trying to add services, and I think Airbnb have just launched, oh yeah, you can add a massage, you can add a tour. And so now the bundle of things in travel is more complicated. The other thing about travel that makes it really good for this type of thing is you book travel far in advance. And so it's not like I go to Amazon, I buy from the inventory and it ships. I'm now making a decision over weeks, possibly months for a summer vacation. And what I want to do is over time, I'm building this little research portfolio. And I know, ChatGPT is fantastic researching a holiday and destinations and building your personalized travel guide. So the obvious thing is, okay, you've built me a guide, book it.
For sure.
So
Totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's no better use case, I think.
Yeah, no, and we certainly agree because we're deep in it over here in the travel world for sure. Now, when I started to get my head around what was happening here, I saw an excellent report done by EY in Japan where I guess they predicted that the future of the way AI was going was that if you were the little kayak guy somewhere remote in Japan and you know, you're kind of a lifestyle business. Yeah, you had a website, but it was probably mainly in Japanese and it didn't actually have live booking on it. It was a contact form or whatever. But the theory they proposed was that, if I prompted that I really wanted to go kayaking on this particular river in, this remote part of Japan, and this is the only operator, that the AI would just keep doing the work until it found that operator and that was what it would bring back to me. But before you were talking about, the messiness of data, and we've gone kind of through a big data age, and in most companies, I think it's still probably quite fragmented and probably not in a great shape in a lot of places. Is the future more likely for that AI to not go on that long journey to try and find me that exact thing, but rather find me a substitute that's easier to find on a Expedia or a Viator? Like, how might that play out? I'm confused by that, I guess.
I haven't thought through that particular problem before, but what's really intriguing is that we have come to trust Google. You ask Google for something and it gives you a page of results. Now, Google is not 100% right because there are millions of results that you don't see, but we have come to trust Google to float the ones that are most relevant to us. It seems to play nicely to Google's revenue model as well. But I think this the long tail of the web is something that we need to explore. And a properly semantic web is going to allow that long tail to be exposed to everybody, because what the agents will start to do is look further down the tail if these sites make themselves available. So I think there's an opportunity right now for the kayak guy in Japan to expose his services, a service layer, possibly using MCP, but to receive agent communications. And I think the agents will show up, look at these sites. And I think there are going to be registries. There's a registry coming out of MIT. I can't remember the name off the hat, off my top of my head. It begins with N. Hold on, give me a second. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, Nanda, Nanda, nanda.mit.edu. That is a registry of agents. And so if you're a travel agent, you can find these agents, but I think there's going to be similar registries of MCPs with back-end services. We're going to need to find these things. And so the quicker these little guys bring themselves into that, it's an opportunity to kind of show their face, and it democratizes things for a period until until a new until a new infrastructure evolves. But there is an opportunity right now.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a beautiful segue. Now, you use the acronym MCP there, and there's another one floating around, A2A. Can you break that down very simply for our audience? Now, some will have heard of it and might know about it, but it might be the first time for some. What do these things mean?
Yeah, so I wrote my Agents Unleashed book pretty much using ChatGPT. I'm now handicapped in such a way that I can't think anymore properly without it. So every time I write it, so there's a little thing that you can see if AI has written that it uses M dashes all over the place. There's a
Hmm.
formula that it seems, and I have to keep reminding it. It's like no M dashes, no emoticons. And it's a pain in the neck because every time I prompt, what I want to do is bring that context to everything I write. I want that instruction to be there. So I need to give the agent a set of parameters, first of all. And so what MCP is, the first layer of it is I can pre-program how that agent behaves on my behalf. So it's a markup language. It's JSON. It's just a JSON file that says, okay, agent, you need to behave like this. Here are the parameters. But deeper than that, what it also allows me to do is connect to back-end systems. So if I'm a travel provider, I've got, let's just say, reservations, I've got refunds, I've got baggage tracking. So if there's APIs, I can expose them as MCP services. And anybody that wants to access my, say, the baggage tracking system, they will download the MCP client. So it's effectively now they have an API that can talk. They can get the credential, pass the credential over. And the interesting thing is, I can write the request in plain language. The LLM will interpret my request. It's like, hey, can you tell me why my bags are late? Because I've already landed. So the LLM will go off and say, okay, well, let me look at your data store. Let me see what flight you were on. Let me see when it arrived, when it landed. So I'll go off to the airline tracking system, pull back that data, and then, okay, this is your name. Here's your name. Go and inquire against the baggage tracking system. So it means that I can write a query in English. The LLM is going to interpret it, push it as a standard language, this MCP protocol, back to the server, and then the information is going to come back, and then the LLM will translate it again. So it's like APIs for the rest of us. If you're non-technical, this kind of exposes all of that services that you could use.
Yeah, for sure. I saw someone who was actually reviewing your book, and they put it as like MCPs are like the USB-C, for agents. It's just a singular way that everybody communicates with one another. And if we all do the same thing, then we'll all be able to talk to each other. On LinkedIn, the AI forward people, or the voices that are way ahead of everybody else, are now saying you need to get your servers MCP ready. Like if you want to catch this agentic wave, and we've had Google I/O a week or so ago, demonstrate to us what agents can do. They're going out, they're finding the information, they bring it back, and now they're even closing the booking all without leaving Google, etc. And so if you're not open to that, if you're not able to communicate with these agents that are heading off, you're not going to get that booking. How difficult is it for your average SMB travel business to expose their data using a MCP?
If you have been diligent about maintaining your systems over the last 10 years, you're very likely to have a services-based architecture. And so taking a service that's already exposed via an API and convert it to MCP is relatively straightforward. I foresee a time when, first of all, I think it's going to be if the API is well documented. So here's the difference. If I'm a if I'm a service wanting to attach myself, so say I'm a review site and I wanted to access, I don't know, booking information or an airline's flight information, then what I would have to do is I'd have to get my programmers to read their API documentation and interpret it and write against their API. Now all that's been removed. So I can just download their MCP client and then put my LLM in front of it and now I'm communicating. So that's the difference. I think that, first of all, I think what we're going to start seeing is if there's documented APIs out there, we're going to be able to generate the MCP servers and clients automatically anyway. Coding platforms like Lovable will be able to do that in a fairly straightforward way. But your architecture has to be good at the back end. Your services have to be the right level of granularity rather than huge bundles of things. But then if you're a smaller site, you're very likely to be using, and I'm not quite sure what the accepted kind of software platforms are in travel, but if you're using those, at some point soon, the MCPs are going to show up anyway as part of whatever SaaS package that you're using.
Interesting. So we are the king of intermediaries, I would say, in travel. So, a lot of it is, mum and pop lifestyle business. We're dragged online, sometimes kicking and screaming through some reservations technology. So in tours and activities, we call them res techs. In hotels, they're called PMSs, whatever. But now they are at the mercy of those companies, because that's where their data actually lives from a booking point of view, to be able to engage in this new style of commerce. What could those people do? Should they be advocating to the people who they have their contracts from technology point of view with, to say, what are you guys doing about this MCP thing? Is that what they should be doing, given that they don't control their own technology per se?
I mean, I don't think it's going to change in that respect. If you're too small and you're non-technical and you're just using a third-party res tech, wait for the res tech to adopt or pressure the res tech, as you said, that's good because it will accelerate that exposure. But I don't think it's going to change. The same reasons that you never built your own booking system as a, 5 hotel chain is the reason that you're not going to go off and do this either. However, for those who are technically inclined and want to play, it's much, much easier. So the barriers come down. I think more people have the potential of building their own. And I think if, there is a point in time now, it's like, it's like the beginning of the web again. There's so much opportunity to do things. So if you're a small local hotel chain, perhaps you can say, okay, well, what else can we do? Can we get involved in flight booking to us as a destination? Can we get involved in renting? Do things become services? Will Avis or Turo actually, for example, can I bundle, you're booking at my local hotel, can you bundle a car into it? Great. The agent that I'm going to build can grab the Turo reservation at the same time and we can move from there. So I think there's now we've thrown things back into the melting pot. For those that are interested and excited and have a vision, there is definitely something they can do.
Yeah, for sure. I can't recall a single res tech or PMS come out and say, hey, we're compliant. We've got this protocol. We are good to go. We're number one. You should swap from whoever you work with now and come and do your business with us because we're ready first and we'll drive far more direct bookings for you because of our ability to, have this protocol in action right now. And I was speaking to someone this morning who did a number of experiments and they all ended up with Expedia, right? So a number of agentic experiments and all of them ended up with Expedia. And I'm like, well, is that because Expedia have got their tech stack up to scratch and nobody else has, or is there something else going on there? I think it's a potential massive competitive advantage for, some of those companies. And I'm super surprised I've actually not seen anybody come out and say it. The other thought that ran through my head while you were talking, is there anything nefarious that can happen here? Like, something connecting in with your data, can it be misused in some way through this protocol? Because it's going to be a genuine concern. IT teams are, well known for their reticence to kind of do new things, that anything that could upset the security basket. Is there any danger there?
I think the two questions that you asked are very, very closely related. Why has nobody adopted? When I was writing this white paper, the first white paper, I discovered MCP and I went to Wikipedia. Look at the page for MCP. No page, because Wikipedia doesn't publish anything that's under 6 months old. So it's new. And I had to rewrite the paper because I thought that the MCPs talked to each other and I realized they didn't. Oh, there's this A2A thing. I have to rewrite the paper now because Google 3 weeks ago just announced A2A. So it's so new that, I mean, I don't blame organizations for just not being ready yet. But the second point is the agent hype is at its maximum, I think, now. And Mark Benioff of Salesforce said 1 billion agents, everybody's tripping over themselves to announce their agents. Is it enterprise ready? No. My advice right now is to, if your business is on a competitive advantage, if it's got agents, then spend the money. If it's not, if it's just a nice to have, wait. So what we don't have in place of agents, agents need good, high quality data with provenance and lineage. We're so far from that. When I go into organizations and I say, where do you keep your OKRs? Where do you do your price forecasting? It's Excel. So number one, the data isn't in good shape. Number two, I think the security holes are very large at the moment. We haven't plugged those. We haven't seen this. So this is a very nascent technology. So I think that there are huge dangers. If you're a large organization and and when we talk about agents, because we're humans, we can grok agents in the tens or hundreds, when in fact it's going to be millions and billions of agents all running sub-processes. And if I think about, even the example that I use in the paper where I'm trying to book travel and I'm using, multiple agents, the agents are going to spawn agents, which are going to spawn agents, and they're going to cross domains as well and companies. And so the complexity required to orchestrate these agents can only be handled by agents. It's like air traffic control multiplied 100 times. Air traffic control is interesting to people who are terrestrial because it happens in 3 dimensions.
Hmm.
Now imagine agents happening in 10 dimensions. Agents can only manage agents.
Yeah, it's a crazy, crazy world. So just talk to us a little bit about A2A, or just a brief explanation so that people can understand what that concept is.
Yeah. So when I said, on the one hand, MCP allows you to talk to your backend, an agent to talk to your backend systems and access those as services. So I'm a logistics provider. So what I do is I pick up bags from travelers' homes and I take them to the airport. And that's my role. So if a customer comes in, buys air travel, and then books a bag service. I want to kind of identify that a little bit. So I need to have an agent that's talking to the customer to get their address, or maybe it's being passed through. I also need to talk to the airline to schedule things. And so these agents need to talk to agents. And so there's another protocol which allows the agents to specify what they do. So the first thing is there's a thing called an agent card, and the agent says, "Hey, I'm this agent. This is how you address me, and this is what I do." And so it is like this market of service providers. It's like when you go to the big hardware store, there's a bunch of guys outside and they all do different things. And they'll come and load your truck, they'll come and unload it, they'll do things for you. And they've all got their business cards.
Yeah.
And it's that. And so the agents will come away and do things for you. And so it's a way for agents to identify themselves and advertise what they do. And then it gives you the protocol as to how to communicate with them. Now, again, anybody can build an MCP for anything else. How do you know it's legitimate? Anybody can build an agent. How do you know it's legitimate? So I think this is a huge problem that we're going to have, in agent to agent is knowing who. And so there is this case of, I think there's a very strong case for agent ID, like just like a passport. Agents are going to
Sure.
have to prove their identity, prove who they are. I mean, if you're a travel site and you're currently accepting humans, when you build an agentic backend, you'll be accepting agents. If you look at how the web is today, 50% of 2023, I think 50% of e-commerce traffic was bots, and about 50% of that was malicious bots.
Mm.
So imagine what we're going to get now. So there's a big case. So protocols for agents to figure out how they're going to communicate, but also to credential themselves are going to be really, really important.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a very amusing video that went around a few months ago where two agents, bumped into each other and realized that they were agents. They said, "Oh, let's switch to Beetlebop," and they started like like R2D2 chatting to each other. It was quite
That's
hilarious.
it.
There
That's
you
it.
go. There you go. It's the best way to explain it. Gam, the time has flown by and we're nearly out of it. So thank you so much for joining us on here and explaining a little bit about agents again. I suspect you're going to be the type of guest that I'm going to want to get back on again because as things evolve over time. But for now, tell us a little bit about where people can find you, how they can get your book and the white paper. We've only got about a minute before we hang up here.
Yeah, sure. The white paper will be out in a couple of weeks and I will publish that on the website. So agentsunleashedbook.com is the website. The book's available on Amazon, Agents Unleashed Volume 1. And you can get me on it's gam.dias at agentsunleashedbook.com.
Perfect. And I've seen you floating around LinkedIn as well. I'm sure people can find you there. Thank you again
Yeah.
for making some time to have a chat with us today. Really appreciate your time and your expertise and your insights and helping out us here in travel to understand what's going on. And thanks everybody for listening in. That's the end of another episode. If you've enjoyed this one and you want to hear more stuff like this, then please hit follow or subscribe to the service you're listening to and make sure you get all the good gold next time the next one drops. Thanks for listening today.
Cheers.
AI, in the travel, here we go. Got that AI on the low, taking flights to and fro, booking trips in a snap with a simple chatbot flow. AI, revolutionizing how we roll. Gonna hop